Hey everybody, JCB here at the Awesomist. You're watching the Awesomist YouTube channel. A few weeks ago, we took a little trip to the happiest place on earth, California's Disneyland. Now, the day we went, as you can see, it was raining quite a bit, which is, I think, a big part of why the park was almost completely empty. Now, I had heard that attendance numbers were low for all of 2019, and they overpriced the tickets due to the opening of Galaxy's Edge, and they had a whole bunch of blackout dates, so people with season passes couldn't go if they wanted to. But I think the weather was the biggest contributing factor on this particular day. Being December, the park was all decked out in Christmas ornaments and decorations, and there was tons of Christmas stuff to buy in all of the stores. We hadn't been to Disneyland since the summer of 2016, so we went directly to the new Star Wars Galaxy Edge, also known as Star Wars Land. So I have kind of mixed feelings about Galaxy's Edge. When you first enter the land, it feels very much like you're stepping onto the set of a Star Wars movie, and I really do feel like if you're able to shut the park down for a day or two, and bring in some fancy film equipment, you could film an episode of like The Mandalorian or a really high-end fan film for Star Wars using this particular land as your setting. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff happening and a lot of decorations, and it just really looks like you're actually in the Star Wars universe. That said, I don't think I'm alone in saying that compared to what they promised, Galaxy's Edge is lacking. And these droids right here are like a prime example. They had promised a lot of interactivity and all kinds of things you can do in the Star Wars land. In fact, I remember there being talk of like a special bracelet that you would like get when you come in the land, and you would like decide if you're part of the light side or the dark side of the Force, and things would interact with you differently based on what that was. Well, there was none of that to be found anywhere. There's just basically a bunch of decorations. Most of them don't do any kind of interaction at all. In fact, I don't think I saw anything that actually interacted with you. I was like waving at the little droids and like trying to get their attention, and they just kind of randomly decided to make noises and move around. They didn't seem to actually react to anything I or anyone else at the park was doing. And maybe it was just due to the rain, but I didn't see very many characters also. Like, I think we saw one stormtrooper walk by, and then of course they had like the stage show with Kylo Ren's TIE Fighter. But that was about it. I mean, there was no Rey anywhere to be found. There were no Wookiees anywhere to be found. You didn't see any like rebels anywhere or any Imperial officers anywhere. It was very much just a decorated land to walk through. I don't know, maybe I just expect more from Disney because they have this reputation of being like above and beyond everybody else as far as theme parks go. But really, this section here with the Millennium Falcon was like the highlight of the entirety of Galaxy's Edge, and even it didn't have much going on. There's just the Falcon sitting there with a bunch of railing that keeps you from getting too close. That said, it is a marvelous recreation of the Millennium Falcon, and the closest thing any human will ever actually get to being near the actual ship, considering, it doesn't exist. The ride, however, is quite a bit of fun, though I had some complaints about this as well. Throughout the entire ride's queue, there's tons of little switches and buttons, and usually these things light up and they're like calling for you to press them. But then when you do actually press them, nothing happens. And by that, I don't mean it doesn't cause anything to happen. I mean, nothing happens. The button itself doesn't actually press, like, at all. There's no movement to the buttons. Like, right here, there's like this crane set up, and there's a flashing button on the crane's console that makes it like really feel like you're supposed to reach over the handrails and touch that button, and maybe you would like lift the thing up and then put it back down or something, but the button doesn't even depress. It just sits there and blinks, and you have no interactivity at all with anything at all in the entire queue, even though there's tons of buttons and switches everywhere. They just don't do anything, and it seems like a huge missed opportunity. In the middle of the ride's queue, there's this ship that's like under repair, and just periodically while you're standing in line, you'll hear like characters talking over the PA system, and then sometimes the ship will like start to move slightly, like the tail will shift a little bit, and it'll like light up like it's about to start, and then just like poop out. And it's all just very underwhelming, especially when you compare it to something like Star Tours that has full-blown animatronics and all kinds of things happening. I believe the robot there actually interacts with you when you like say hello to him.
How are you? How you doing?
So it just seems like a huge step back from what Disney was able to do back when I was a kid. One thing they did really well was making it seem like you actually walked on board the Millennium Falcon. So this part of the line, there's some windows and you can see out onto the top, like the roof of the Millennium Falcon. So as you continue through the line, it feels like you make your way around and down to that loading bay where the Millennium Falcon's parked, just due to your basic spatial awareness of where it was parked and where you currently are. It really does feel like you end up going into that fake Millennium Falcon. Even though there's no possible way that Falcon you see outside could house all of the necessary equipment required to run a ride like this. There's just no way you're actually in that Millennium Falcon you see outside. You're just in a big building, but it does feel like you've made your way around and into the actual innards of the Falcon by the time you get to this waiting area here. So this is like a staging area where you wait for your turn to go on the ride. And before you get to this part, they actually give each person of your group like a card that has which position that you're supposed to fill in the actual ride. So there's 2 pilots, there's 2 gunners, and there's 2 engineers. We rode this ride twice, and the first time I was the right-hand pilot that controls the up and down and sends the ship into hyperspace. The second time I was a gunner, and I have to say, if you want to film this ride, you definitely want to be the gunner, because all you have to do is sit there and press one button, which makes it way easier to actually enjoy what's happening around you. Overall, Galaxy's Edge is really well designed, but there's not a whole lot to do. As I said, there's not very many interactive elements. The droids pretty much ignore you. As I said, there weren't very many like costumed characters around the day we went. Really, it seemed like it's just a big shopping place with nothing really to do for anybody, let alone little kids. Like, there's hardly anything to do. If you're not willing to drop $200 on a lightsaber or $300 on building your own droid, or you're not willing to get there at 8:30 in the morning to schedule your time to sit in the cantina and drink alcoholic drinks, there's just not much to do. And sure, Rise of the Resistance opens on like January 17th of next year, so there will at least be a second ride, but other than that, it's just a Star Wars themed shopping mall, and that's not all that appealing when you consider the Disneyland prices. I mean, it's pretty sad that this is one of the best things in the entire Galaxy's Edge land. Remember when there were supposed to be giant AT-AT walkers and all this crazy stuff going into this part of the park? We haven't seen any of that. Including the time we waited in line, we saw all of Galaxy's Edge in like an hour and a half. And I feel like for the amount of money Disney spent on this park, and the amount of stuff you could do with a Star Wars themed land, it's just not much there. It's all just eye candy, decorations to look at and admire, and then move on 2 seconds later. And some of that stuff isn't even all that good. I mean, this robot here is just one of those drinking water bird toys, but scaled up.
It's drinking the water! Going back for more.
So while a lot of the decorations look film accurate and are absolutely top tier set dressing, that's really all they are. There's no interactivity. There's no going above and beyond what was expected. I mean, this is the kind of thing any theme park can do. We expect more from Disney. Heck, Universal Studios Hollywood has the Transformers ride that has tons of buttons in its ride queue, and those buttons actually depress. And then there's situations where there's just missed opportunities, like these doors that should only open if you move your hand in front of them, but they're just normal automatic doors. I know I already mentioned the droids earlier, and don't get me wrong, I love me some gonk, but this is a huge missed opportunity. This is something little kids would love to play around with, love to be able to interact with these droids. Heck, Mr. Potato Head at the Toy Story ride in California Adventure interacts with guests waiting in line. If you ask Mr. Potato Head to tell you a joke, he will tell you a joke. And that ride opened in 2008. So these guys should be able to do more than just turn their head and beep. After we were done with Star Wars Land, we went over to the Haunted Mansion, which is themed after The Nightmare Before Christmas this time of year. I think the last time I was at Disneyland during Christmas time, this ride was either closed or broke down, or maybe the line was just way too busy where we couldn't get on, or maybe I did get on and it was just super forgetful. This time, the ride was closed down, and then it happened to open right as we were walking by, so we got right on with no wait. Being a seasonal redress of a classic Disneyland ride, I will say you should ride this if you happen to be at the park during Christmas time. That is the only time you can experience this iteration of Haunted Mansion. We spent a couple more hours at the park riding things like Star Tours and the Buzz Lightyear ride, and then finally ending it off with It's a Small World, which is also a Christmas redress of a classic ride. Gotta love those black ceiling tiles, man oh man. We went on a few of the rides throughout the day, like the Indiana Jones ride and Pirates of the Caribbean, but this was the final ride that we went on before the rain really started pouring down again, and we decided to call it a day. So that was my trip to Disneyland, the first trip I'd been there in a couple of years. I don't plan on going back for a couple more just because there's not going to be anything new for a while. Like, you know, Rise of Resistance will be out in 2020. Maybe I'll go and do that, but I don't see any real reason to. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as I release new videos every week. So until next time, keep being awesome. The deep fried quesadilla.
That a corn tortilla? Oh no, I'm gonna hate it.
Since we were expecting corn tortillas, this was a little disappointing.
I think it's the same cheese as in the pretzel. I'm not kidding.
Cheese next door?
It's the cheese next door.